Thank you. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov. Thank you, Rabbi Nosenchuk. It is quite an honor to be invited here by you. What Rabbi Nosenchuk reminded me of today is that we used to sit actually next to each other at the NIFTY, at the high school leadership conferences, because I was from Minnesota and he was from Michigan. And so those northern regions actually sat together at all kinds of regional and national conferences. And so the joy continues this evening in many ways. In fact, I've spent much of the last week with Cantor Sager at the ordination exercises of the Hebrew Union College in New York and the Board of Governors meetings and our strategic planning, so that has been quite an honor. And I also had the honor of teaching your daughter when she was a student in Jerusalem and now serving Temple Israel in Minneapolis, which is where I grew up. So there's all these wonderful connections. And I have to thank all of you, musicians, for the ways in which you're bringing God's music through your instrument, through your soul, through your voices, together with all of us this evening. It's quite a spiritual and powerful experience, so thank you. The last time I was here was in 2003, and before that, I think the last time before that I was here was in 1985. Anybody here in 1985? In 1985, we must have had some regional conference here, and you were also gracious as to allow us to sleep in sleeping bags, I imagine, in some social hall. But since that moment until today, especially as I embark on my new project of seeking out the next generation of leadership of the Reform movement, I'm very, very aware of the extent to which this congregation has raised up a generation of rabbis, of cantors, of educators, how much this congregation and its lay leadership has contributed to the strength of Reform Judaism. And I have a very strong sense here since last night and in preparing for this weekend of the extent to which this congregation will produce the next generation of leaders, both lay and professional. Are any of you guys signing up yet? We're going to talk later. But between last night and this morning, as many of you know, I have been quite nervous. Not so much about this presentation, but about the fact that this morning, Rosh Chodesh was celebrated at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, and I know that many of you are supporters of, and have been long-term supporters of Women of the Wall. Many of you know that I have been a spokesperson and writing and teaching about it. But between last night and this morning, my nervousness had to do with a certain particular event that we knew was happening this morning, which was the mass protest and really stand-in of the Haredi community, female community, of the women's section at the Wall. How many of you have followed this in the Jewish press? And I have to say, the fact, I want to tell you this loud and clear, the fact that there wasn't more violence, the fact that that wasn't an embarrassing, horrific, painful moment for the Jewish people has everything to do with you. It has everything to do with you. The way in which the government and the police forces are now protecting Women of the Wall and ensuring that that space continues to be a place and a source of spiritual power and home for the entire Jewish people has everything to do with you. And I'll elaborate in a moment. But first, our larger question, which is, why does Israel matter? And some might argue that it doesn't. In fact, that you could build a pretty strong Jewish identity without any connection to Israel. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But first I want to make 3 responses to that question. Why does Israel matter? Because of the past, the present, and the future. Israel matters because of the Jewish past, the Jewish present, and the Jewish future. But I could end the talk now if it were that simple. It is so complex because Israel has mattered in the past in a very different way than it matters in the present, in a very different way than it will matter, God willing, in the future. In the past, the relationship to Israel, certainly of Jews around the world, was a specific one and a kind that you might actually be most familiar with. The first phase of that relationship, of course, is Avraham, who is told, this is a literacy test now, right? Lech lecha me'artzecha, to a land that I will show you. El ha'eretz asher areka, the land that I will show you. Everything about the beginning of Judaism and the beginning of the Jewish people has to do with a particular place, a relationship to a particular place, a project, a dream, a vision about a particular place. In fact, at that moment of the choosing of Abraham to be the first Jew and to lead a people, that relationship had to do with God and a particular place and a particular people, much more than it had anything to do with observance or mitzvot. In fact, this is long before the Jewish people got Torah. So our relationship to the land, to that place, and to our dream for that place predates Torah. The gift of our relationship to the land predates Torah. So as we prepare to celebrate Shavuot and the renewal of the covenant of our relationship through Torah with God, we should remember that our primary covenant actually originates with our people and with a particular place. But if you think about even more recent Jewish history, Israel has figured central in our dreams and in our hopes. If you think about Hatikva, for 2,000 years, we have dreamed of being a free people in our land, right? The land of Zion and Jerusalem. That has been our dream, that we would one day have the opportunity to do that. So in modernity, and when we had the opportunity to fully not only be a nation and a people and a religion, but to become a nation state, to have sovereignty, that dream came true. That dream came true, but with a whole new layer of complexity, which I'll call the present. That new layer of complexity is, how do you be a Jewish sovereign state with all of those layers of requirement and those layers of dream and that complexity? In the first stage of the state, I would say we did quite well vis-a-vis our relationship with diaspora Jewry because, as David Hartman used to say, Zichrono Livracha, David Hartman, Rabbi Professor David Hartman, who just passed away this past February, my teacher and mentor, he used to say, it worked well because Israel was your nachas machine. Right? Israel was your nachas machine. How amazing that it even came to be. How amazing the 6-Day War. How amazing that we, quite literally in my husband's family's case, we drained the swamps. We made, literally, they made the desert bloom. What a nachas machine. A Jewish state became a fabulous example of what a people could be when given sovereignty. But in our lifetimes, it got more complex. Because we had to ask the question, not only why do we need a Jewish state for our own sense of being able to have a sanctuary and to be able to have a home, but it became much more complex because we had to say, can this state be both Jewish and democratic? Or is that an oxymoron? The Jewish democratic state that it claims to be, is that an oxymoron, or how does that work? So in this phase of Israel's life, we've been struggling with these questions, which relates to a third question. How can Israel act ethically as a Jewish state in an age and a time of war, in a time of occupation? How can and should Israel be a Jewish democratic state? So you can see that in our lifetime, this question of why does Israel matter and what our relationship to Israel should be has become infinitely complex. In fact, so complex that for many Jews, it's better just to leave it aside. It just divides the Jewish community. It's no longer the nachas machine that we needed it to be. It raises all kinds of very, very complex questions. So there's been a major shift in the narrative from a narrative of nachas or of a crisis narrative where it was easier for us to rally to the call of Israel. It was easy to rally to that call, right? Because either Israel was about to be destroyed and you needed to rush to save it, or some diaspora community was in danger of being destroyed and Israel was its sanctuary and we had to rush to save that community. And so either way, it was based on some kind of crisis. But now we know that there are two strong communities, two major centers of Jewish population. There's really a bicentricity of Jewish life. There's a powerful, alive, growing, changing, diverse Jewish community in the land of Israel. And there is a growing, diverse, filled with new possibilities and innovation Jewish community in North America. So the whole relationship is changing. And this crisis, neither is in crisis, really. Neither does Israel need you in order for it to survive. That may be heresy, I understand. And neither is really any diaspora Jewish community in need of Israel to be its sanctuary. We've more or less already brought all those who want to come to the land of Israel, almost all, to the land of Israel and the state of Israel. So in a way, those needs have been fulfilled in that crisis narrative for those of us born from 67 and onward. It doesn't work anymore. So in Israel of the present is in need of a new narrative, a narrative which understands Israel as a startup nation. You can't both have Israel be a startup nation and the source of all this amazing high-tech, medical, commercial, invention, agricultural, all kinds of fantastic. You can't have a nation be so strong and have this one of the strongest militaries in the world thanks to its relationship also with America. You can't have it be that and also claim that it's about to be destroyed. It's just not true. There are indeed existential threats on all of our borders and from afar. But Israel's capacity to defend itself is completely different in our time. Completely different. And so if we take this step and say, well, what's the narrative of our time? The narrative of our time has the complexity of how can Israel be a Jewish democratic nation? How will Israel solve its conflict with the Palestinians? And ladies and gentlemen, the question of pluralism is at the core of what's going to form this new narrative for all of us. Can Israel be a place of pluralism for the Jewish people? And that's why Women of the Wall, in addition to its important role in this moment in history, and you'll hear much more about this from my friend and the heroine of this age, Anat Hoffman, in just a few weeks. But Women of the Wall actually raises the core pluralism questions to the fore. There are three big questions that it points to that you have been key in solving. Question one, I'll just put it really simply. Are women people too? Can Jewish women have a full and equal place in Jewish life and in the public sphere, also in Israel, also in Jerusalem, also at the wall? Right, to quote Hillary Clinton, this might be the unfinished business of our time. She said it about women's rights all over the world, that this is the unfinished business of the 21st century, and I'm saying it's the unfinished Jewish business in many ways. But that's the first issue that Women of the Wall points to. But actually it's a deeper, larger issue that you have had everything to do with, and I will come back to that. The second issue Is non-Orthodox Judaism? Are the liberal denominations legitimate in the state of Israel? Do they deserve equal funding? Should they have an equal place? Should our rabbis and synagogues have access to the same resources? An issue that I would say we're at a turning point. The new government signals to all of us that we are at a turning point on this issue. I imagine you will see a very different role for progressive and liberal Judaism in Israel in the next 5 to 10 years in radically different ways that we can't even imagine today. And the third issue is that Women of the Wall has pointed to: do we matter to each other? Does diaspora Jewry really matter to Israel? Or do they really just want your financial support and political support in Washington? Do you really matter? And do they really matter to you, what they really think and feel and understand? All of them and all their complexity? Do they really matter to you? Their struggles? Their willingness to put their lives on the line? Does that really matter to you? Do we matter to each other, is that third question. The answer to that is very clear if we look at what happened this morning. As recently as September, the Israeli police forces responsible for the area of the Kotel were less than respectful in their treatment of Women of the Wall. The rabbi of the Kotel, Rabbi Rabinovich, the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of the state of Israel, the prime minister's office, the foreign ministry, all of these people, by the way, I've personally had a lot of interaction with over the last few months. I would say as recently as September, the answer to my third question, do you matter, was not really. Or maybe perhaps honestly, yes, but we don't know how to handle this issue. What happened between September and some very uncomfortable arrests of a lot of my friends and colleagues and their children, and this morning? What happened? This morning, the police, in exactly the volume and number and stance, as far as I understand it, obviously I was here and not there, but as far as I understand it from my friends and colleagues, did exactly what they needed to do, respectfully creating a protection line for Women of the Wall to be able to continue to hold their Rosh Chodesh services this morning. They respectfully protected them from the screams and chairs and bottles being thrown at them by young Haredi women and men. In the past, that didn't happen. And I want to share with you, friends, why that happened. That happened because our colleagues and all of you en masse have said to consul generals all over North America and our colleagues to the foreign ministry and to the Jewish agency and to the prime minister's office, we have been very, very clear. You matter to us. We have to matter to you, otherwise there may be no future to the Jewish people. That place, it's really just 60 meters. That place is not an Orthodox synagogue. That place belongs to the Jewish people. The paratroopers who liberated it in 1967 said, and joined Women of the Wall and said, we didn't liberate it for it to belong to one small segment of the Jewish people. We liberated it for the entire Jewish people. They came and stood with us in solidarity just a few months ago. So between the paratroopers, greater awareness in Israeli society, and all of our colleagues in Israel, our colleagues and friends all over North America, all the ways in which you here in this community, through your rabbis and through consulates all over North America, 2 weeks ago, I sat in the foreign ministry office and they said, we have had 3 meetings with the rabbi of the Kotel and 3 meetings with the police forces to make sure they understand. This is about Jewish peoplehood. This is not a turf war between the rabbi of the Kotel and anybody else. This place has to be a place of prayer for the entire Jewish people, and that is because of you. The future. Why does Israel matter for the future? Because just like this moment that I described this morning, there will be many moments like this moving forward, and the question will be, where are you? Where is your voice? Are we going to continue as a movement with the other liberal denominations and with our colleagues of the Orthodox world as well? Are we going to continue to stand together and say, without a strong, clear sense that Israel is home also to us, there will be no relationship? The future is at stake. If you take Israel out of the Jewish sensibility of North American Jews, you have a crippled Judaism. You have a Judaism that is incomplete because Israel is there from the beginning. If you take Israel out of the relationship and you take a relationship to Israel of being a homeland to all of us out of the equation, you will have a weakened Jewish people. This is what hangs in the balance today. We have a window of opportunity. We have this opening with the current government. We have an opening because all our denominations are working together with the foreign ministry and the Jewish agency. We have a window of opportunity right now because of the sheer volume of birthright alumni and participants, also from our own Reform congregations. We have a window of opportunity also because of what can still yet happen on the college campus and what is happening in our synagogues. It hangs in the balance, the extent to which Israel matters in the future. But what I hope you see is that the window is wide open. What I hope you see and feel is that the part of the reason the window is open today about the future is because of what you have been able to achieve in the present. To be able to sit in the foreign ministry and say, I feel that the police forces are handling us differently. I know there have been conversations with the chief rabbis. I know there have been conversations with the rabbi of the Kotel. The answer to the third question is yes, we matter to each other. The answer to the second question is yes, there is room and legitimacy for the non-Orthodox denominations in Israel. And the answer to the first question is, yes, it is unfinished business, but this is our chance to begin to be clear about the way in which that business can come to a completion. So, ladies and gentlemen, Israel matters in the future exactly as much as you will make it matter. The window is wide open. As we move toward a conclusion, and I look forward to discussing the complexity of these issues with you later today and also tomorrow, I wanted to just conclude with a part of the prayer for the state of Israel on this Rosh Chodesh. Avinu shebashamayim tzur Yisrael v'goalo. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, Barechet Medinat Yisrael, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love and spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise and protect. Guide them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And let us say, Amen.